When the silence of the night sky over Kashmir was broken on April 29, 2025, it wasn't by a sonic boom or a missile strike. It was broken by something far more historic and far more consequential. It was broken by a signal, the unmistakable electronic signature of an engagement that would redefine not only the military balance of South Asia, but the global perception of technological supremacy in the skies. On that night, under the cloak of darkness and the weight of decades of hostility, the air forces of India and Pakistan faced off in what would become the first known direct engagement between India's French-made Dassault Rafales and Pakistan's Chinese-built J-10CPs. And for the first time in the history of modern warfare, a Chinese-manufactured PL-15 air-to-air missile, long theorized, feared, and analyzed, was fired in active combat, not in a training range or a closed simulation, but in the real sky against a real Western adversary. The symbolic weight of that moment cannot be overstated. For years, Western defense analysts speculated about the PL-15. With its range exceeding 200 kilometers, active electronically scanned array AESA radar guidance, and two-way data link, the missile represented the cutting edge of Chinese aerospace engineering. But until that night, it had never been used in live combat. That moment, when a Pakistani J-10CP pilot locked onto an Indian Rafale and launched a PL-15, marked the beginning of something unprecedented. The first ever use of Chinese next-generation missile technology in a peer-to-peer engagement. Not against insurgents or outdated aircraft, but against one of the most sophisticated Western fighters in operation. The PL-15 was no longer a rumor, no longer a theoretical threat on PowerPoint slides. It was now a weapon of war, and yet the world almost missed it. There was no bombastic announcement, no press conference, no smoking wreckage on the ground. What unfolded was a quiet but powerful shift, a stealthy chess move in the sky, where strategy, software, and split-second decisions changed the future of air power. It began with an incursion alert, Indian surveillance picking up high-speed targets crossing into contested airspace over the Kashmir region. Within minutes, Rafales were scrambled from bases in Ambala and Hasimara. These aircraft, gleaming symbols of Western aeronautical dominance, were equipped with the Spectra electronic warfare suite, Thales RBE-2 ASA radar, and the Meteor missile, until now considered the most lethal long-range air-to-air weapon in the region. The Indian pilots flew with confidence, experience, and perhaps an expectation of overwhelming superiority. But they weren't alone in the sky. Awaiting them on the Pakistani side were multiple J-10CPs, the most advanced frontline fighters in Pakistan's inventory. Built by China's Chengdu Aerospace Corporation, these aircraft had been upgraded to match and exceed many of the capabilities found in Western 4.5 generation fighters. But what truly made the J-10CP a threat that night wasn't its engine or its airframe. It was the digital ecosystem behind it. Each jet was part of a live combat network, connected in real time to ground-based sensors, airborne early warning and control aircraft, and AI-assisted targeting algorithms. And unlike traditional combat formations, the J-10CPs were flying as part of an integrated swarm, each one feeding and receiving data from the others in milliseconds. From the moment the Rafales entered contested airspace, they were already being tracked by radar nodes located far beyond visual range. The J-10CPs began to maneuver in coordinated arcs, utilizing radar cross-section management and deceptive jamming pulses to obfuscate their locations. The Rafale's Spectra suite responded, trying to build a threat picture, but the clutter was overwhelming. Radar reflections bounced from false echoes, infrared signatures faded and reappeared, targets split and remerged. It was electronic ghosting at an unprecedented level. And at that moment, as one Rafale pilot attempted to establish a radar lock, the lock was lost. Then another. Then came the missile alert. The first PL-15 had been launched. That moment, a digital lock from beyond 150 kilometers, a launch command passed through an AI-vetted fire control system, and a sleek, ramjet-powered Chinese missile streaking through the upper atmosphere toward a French-built aircraft signified the crumbling of a long-standing assumption. That assumption being that no non-Western air force could successfully use its indigenous weapon systems in real combat to challenge a frontline NATO standard fighter. The PL-15's guidance system, built on AESA radar, similar in class to Western systems, but tuned to operate in heavily jammed conditions, allowed it to maintain lock even under Spectra's defensive scrambling. For the first time, the French-Indian fusion of stealth, jamming, and sensor resilience faced a missile with equivalent, or possibly superior, electronic resistance. The Indian Rafale, evading at full throttle and deploying countermeasures, managed to break radar lock at the final moment, but not without consequence. The engagement disrupted the formation. Communications went dark. Indian pilots reported scrambled data links, delayed targeting information, and overlapping threat indicators. One pilot later recounted feeling like they were flying inside a maze of mirrors, never sure if what they saw was real or a decoy. The Rafales were forced to disengage, unable to effectively return fire. Their Meteor missiles operating in a heavily jammed environment failed to achieve lock before safe engagement range. For the Indian Air Force, this wasn't just a tactical retreat. It was a strategic alarm bell, a wake-up call that their most advanced fighters could be challenged and even outmaneuvered by a digital combat system developed in China and operated by their regional rival. For Pakistan, this was more than a symbolic victory. It was a demonstration to their adversaries, allies, and global observers that they now possess the capability to challenge superior platforms using battlefield integration, electronic warfare, and next-gen missile technology. And for China, it was a moment of profound strategic validation. The PL-15, which had been touted for years as a rival to the Meteor and AIM-120D, had now tasted real combat. Even in a limited capacity, even without a kill, the message was clear. Chinese missile systems had arrived on the global stage, not as cheap alternatives, but as competitive instruments of high-end air warfare. In a single missile launch, Beijing had shattered decades of skepticism surrounding its aerospace claims. Around the world, military planners took note. From Washington to Paris, from Tokyo to Canberra, defense circles began urgently reassessing the threat posed by Chinese origin systems, not just in Chinese hands, but in the hands of their strategic partners. Nations operating US or European aircraft now faced a sobering question. Could their platforms hold the line against next-generation Chinese missiles deployed by adversaries in complex electronic warfare environments? Could traditional dogfighting doctrines survive in a battle space where the kill chain is completed at 150 kilometers by software? This wasn't just about a missile. This was about the collapse of the Western monopoly on electronic warfare supremacy. The idea that only NATO standard